Hello, my name is John Kelly and this is the Weber Auto YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about how to check fluid level on Toyota automatic transmissions that do not have a dipstick. Now every one of my students that I even bring this topic up with roll their eyes and think, oh my gosh, everybody knows how to check transmission fluid. You don't need to tell me how to do that. Well, come to find out, very few people actually know how to check the fluid level on a Toyota transmission without a dipstick. And there are other vehicle manufacturers that don't have a dipstick or a dipstick tube, just like the Toyotas, the Aisin automatic transmissions. And so I want to show you the proper method of checking the fluid level. It's very involved. There's a 12-page document just to do it out of Toyota's service information for several of their automatic transmissions. And so what I have here is the oil pan from an Aisin U660E or U760E or F transmission. This is the 6-speed automatic transmission that comes in just about every front-wheel drive Toyota midsize, full-size car. It has no dipstick tube, no dipstick. Instead, what it has is this little straw and one drain plug in the bottom pan. Now this drain plug is both a drain plug to get fluid out of the transaxle. It's also a plug that we use to check the fluid level. And so we'll take just to give you a quick demonstration of the parts, you'll need a 6mm hex drive to remove the drain plug. And when you get that plug out, there's still this this red straw sticking up. So let me zoom in so you can see real close what I'm talking about here. This straw, that sets the fluid level at the top of that straw. And so if you pull the drain plug out, you take the drain plug out and fluid comes out of that straw, you might think that, oh, it was over full and you're supposed to let it continue draining until it reaches a slow drip and then put the plug back in and shazam, you're all done. A lot of my students and people that I talk to think that that's all there is to it, but there's a big problem with that. And this transaxle is very picky about its fluid level being correct. It'll make all kinds of noise. It actually sounds like a power steering pump, hydraulic power steering pump, although this has electric power steering. It's that kind of a whining cavitation type pump noise that you would hear. Well, as it turns out, the fluid that's used in Toyota transmissions, the world standard fluid, the WS fluid here, like almost any other transmission fluid, expands when it gets hot. And if you actually went into Toyota's service information and printed the instructions on how to check this fluid level, oh, you don't need instructions to check fluid level. Everybody knows how to do that. If you actually check the instructions, it would tell you that this is only going to be accurate between 104 degrees and 113 degrees of automatic transmission fluid temperature. Now, what temperature is fluid normally? Let's say a customer's been out driving around and they decide, oh, hey, I need to get my oil changed, and I'll pull it into some oil change place or even the Toyota dealer or any other repair shop to get my oil changed, and I'll have them check all my fluids too. If somebody even attempts to check this fluid level, chances are they're going to let too much fluid out because they're checking it when the fluid temperature is too hot. This fluid expands. All transmission fluids expand. But if you check this fluid when the temperature of the fluid is above 113 degrees Fahrenheit, the fluid has expanded. The volume is physically increased from expansion, and if you pull that this plug out of the bottom of the transaxle and wait for the fluid to finish draining, you have just effectively drained fluid out of a transaxle that was probably filled correctly out of the factory. So the 2007 and above front-wheel drive Toyota vehicles that use this transaxle, the only way you could accurately check this on a customer whose transmission fluid temperature was above 113 Fahrenheit was to make them leave the car. And if the transaxle was all the way up to normal operating temperature of at least 185 degrees to as high as maybe 220, 230 degrees Fahrenheit, it's way too hot to check. So you may even have to keep the vehicle overnight just to let the fluid cool down. And you cannot, as part of a lube, oil, and filter, tell somebody that you checked their fluid level if you didn't check it, or if you didn't check it accurately. You need to do it the right way. Now, this has caused a lot of these automatic transmissions to be underfilled. And when they're underfilled, they starve for fluid. Clutches can slip from lack of fluid pressure and burn the transmissions up, transaxles up. So Toyota last year, within the last year and a half or so, came up with a new procedure to adjust this fluid level. And so the printed service, or the service information that they have online, is the information on how to check this fluid level when it's between 104 and 113 degrees. It still works great. You don't need any special tools to check that if you have a vehicle that's at that temperature. And of course, how do you check the fluid level? You've got to have a scan tool to plug into the data link connector and pull up the transaxle transmission fluid temperature sensor. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, most vehicles when they come into your shop are going to be warmed up more than 113 degrees. So Toyota's released a technical service bulletin talking about and telling you about some new tools that are available to allow you to check this transmission fluid level at a hotter temperature. And I want to show you these tools. So just to check transmission fluid level on a Toyota Camry, Highlander, Venza, Sienna, just about any front-wheel drive 6-speed automatic transmission, you are going to need this big pump assembly back here full of world standard fluid. And this pump just has a quick connect fitting here that allows you to connect right to the fill plug, the fill port on the automatic transmission, and pump fluid right into it. And I'll show you that on the car. Then you are also going to need this vacuum tank or some other type of vacuum system to put a vacuum on the transaxle so that when you pull this plug right here, when you take this plug out, if you've applied a vacuum to the transaxle, fluid will not come out. You won't lose your fluid. So you put a vacuum on the fill plug of the transaxle with this air-powered vacuum here. And then there's this kit right here. So you need these 3 pieces to check fluid level. This kit has a vacuum regulator to make sure we've got enough vacuum to pull the plug. We have an adapter to connect to the transaxle, and then we have a very interesting little tool right here that I want to show you on the oil pan. So obviously I've told you that the transmission fluid level increases as it gets hot. The volume the fluid expands, the volume increases. And so what Toyota has done has they've come up with a tool that when we take this drain plug out of the bottom of the transaxle, which by the way, it won't drain the fluid out, it's just to check the fluid level. If you want to take the fluid out, you've got to take the straw out, and it uses the same 6 millimeter head driver, and you just run it all the way through the bottom of the transaxle and take it out, and now you can drain the fluid out of the transaxle. But we need this in there to check the fluid level at 104 degrees, 104 to 113. That's the only reason that piece is there. All right, so let me screw that back in. All right, what this tool does from this kit is it gives us an adjustable height straw. So this red straw only comes in one height. This has a tube that can go up and down. So let me zoom in on the tool here. So you'll notice that it has some graduations in millimeters. It has 1 millimeter markings. We start at 0 and it goes as high as 150 millimeters here. And in the technical service bulletin, you have to look up your year, make, model, and drive a vehicle, and it'll tell you how many millimeters to stick this tube up. Now this Venza we're going to work on is 71 millimeters. So here's the 70 right here. There's the 71. There's a little thumb screw on the back right here. I'm just going to lock that in place. And that will, when we put this tool in our drain plug hole and stick it in, and we just tighten it up by hand. Notice now if I can get it to focus. There we go. That tube, as part of the tool, sticks up higher. And that is because this tool is designed to check the fluid when it's at 185 degrees or higher. And so I'm sure there's a maximum temperature that it's rated for. But if I loosen this thumb screw down below, I can shorten the height of that straw. I can lengthen the height of that straw. That allows us to compensate for the fluid expansion in this transaxle. So we are going to go over to the vehicle and actually do this entire procedure and check the transaxle fluid level on this 2009 Toyota Venza that has this transaxle in that I just happen to have in the shop today as part of my transmission class. So let's go over to the vehicle and I'll show you how all this works and check the fluid level. Okay, we are over to the vehicle, and like I said, we've got a 2009 Toyota Venza all-wheel drive vehicle on the hoist. And the first thing I want to show you is the scan tool. So let's zoom in and take a look at some data values that we need for this exercise. The first thing we need is our transmission fluid temperature. So our automatic transmission temperature, oil temperature, as you can see there, is 186 degrees. So 185 is the minimum that the technical service bulletin tells us. So 185 to 194 is the preferred temperature. I've let this thing run for hours and hours and hours, and it never exceeds 194 at an idle. So in your shop, just sitting there idling, once it gets up to operating temperature here, you should be fine. The other piece of data that we need is right here. That's our engine speed, 670, 80, 90, so less than 700 RPM. So we're looking at transmission fluid temperature and engine RPM on the data list for the automatic transmission. All right, the next thing I want to show you is right here in the left front wheel well. If we zoom in behind the tire, and we had to take a little plastic panel off, right there, that plug with the letters WS, which stands for World Standard, that plug is the Transaxle oil fill plug. That's where we're going to put in fluid as we check the automatic transmission fluid level. And so we need to take that plug out, and we will install an adapter from the fluid level checking kit. So let me get that adapter, and we'll get that installed. So the adapter it calls for is this one with the green fitting, and I've already loosened that oil fill plug, so I'm just going to reach up in there. It's pretty hot, engine at normal operating temperature. I'm going to take that fill plug out without burning myself, and I will screw in this green adapter in its place, and you just screw it in by hand, just hand tied. It has a little O-ring that does the sealing of the entrance to the transaxle. So now we've got that adapter connected. Let me zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little better. So now I've got the adapter with the green fitting hooked on. The adapter comes down and has a quick connect fitting, just like an air hose right here, that we will connect to a vacuum regulator and a vacuum pump, or not pump, but a vacuum tool. It's an air-powered vacuum tool. So let me zoom out so I can show you the tools. So right here I've got the vacuum regulator. We're just going to hook this up underneath the bottom of the vehicle, connect this clear hose to that vacuum fitting that we've already installed on the inlet, the fill plug to the transmission. I've got the vacuum regulator. I'm just going to hook it here underneath the vehicle somewhere and find a good place to hook it. Right there. And I'm just going to connect the vacuum regulator to that pipe that we have connected to the inlet of the automatic transmission. So now you can see I've got the regulator, and it has a gauge on it. Let me zoom in so you can see the gauge. This gauge just measures inches of mercury vacuum. And the specification we're going to be looking for is between 2 and 5 inches of mercury. So here's the 5 mark right there, and 0. So somewhere in this range when we get our vacuum tank hooked up. Okay, let me get the vacuum tank. This is the vacuum tank right here, and it has a flexible hose that is going to connect to the bottom of our vacuum regulator here. So I'm just going to connect that up right there. It has an on-off valve right here where I can turn the vacuum on or turn it back off. And of course there's no vacuum on it yet, because on this tank there's an quick connect air fitting for our shop air supply, and it should not be any higher than 100 psi. So we're going to hook compressed air to here. It'll flow across an orifice, create a vacuum in this tank that'll put a vacuum on the entire transaxle inside. So let me get a air hose now. I now have our shop air. I'm just going to connect that to our vacuum tank here. And there's a valve right here on the top, and we're just going to turn that on. Now I know that's noisy. You may have a hard time hearing me while that's running, but let's take a look at the gauge now. Once again, we're looking for 2 to 5 inches of mercury. So it looks like we're at about 2.5, 3 inches of mercury. So we're right within the specification window of where we should be. So we've hooked up the vacuum tank. We've applied a vacuum to the transaxle itself. And what that is going to allow us to do, let me bring the camera in even closer now. Okay, I've repositioned the camera. We've got our 2 to 5 inches of mercury on our vacuum gauge. We put a vacuum on the transaxle, and what that is going to allow us to do now is come in right here on the drain plug and remove it. And that'll allow us to remove it without losing any fluid. Now normally if you pull this plug out, we're going to lose fluid. But I've pre-loosened it for this demonstration. So let me get it out the rest of the way. As long as we've got a vacuum on there, we should be okay and not have any fluid drip out. And if we did have fluid drip out, it's at 180, 190 degrees, and it would burn us. So you want to probably wear some gloves. But notice not a drop of fluid comes out. Now if I turn that vacuum off, fluid will definitely come out, so we do not want to do that. So I'll set that off to the side here. So the next thing we're going to do is get that adjustable straw that I showed you with the graduated markings in millimeters on the side. The instructions tell us to install this tool with the straw all the way down. So right here are our millimeter markings. I have it retracted all the way. I'm going to screw that in all of the way. And then in the service information, the service bulletin, we have to look up the year, make, model of this vehicle. This particular one tells us that if our engine idle is between 600 and 700 RPM, which ours is less than 700, that we adjust this to the 71 millimeter mark. Well, here's 70 right here. 71's up a little higher, so we're just going to lift this up to, there's 70, 71, and tighten the thumb screw. Now we have a little hose here that fluid will drain out of if it's overfull, but now we've compensated for the hot temperature of the fluid. And of course I need a drain pan to capture the fluid. Let me grab that real quick. If it is overfilled, fluid will come out of there, so we want to make sure that we've got something to capture that fluid. Alright, I've got a drain bucket below here. So here's our hose. Let me zoom in a little bit on the hose so we can watch it. If the fluid was too high, too much fluid in, when we turn off the vacuum, so here it goes, I'm going to shut it off. We'll turn it off on the upper valve and turn it off on the lower valve. Here comes some fluid. So notice it's not a lot of fluid, but we have some fluid coming out of there. Now what that tells us is that it was not too low, because if it was too low, we wouldn't have any fluid coming out of there at all. If it were too high, we would have a constant stream of fluid coming out. And so what we're looking for is pretty much exactly this. If fluid is just barely coming out at a kind of a slow drip here, then we know that for this transmission fluid temperature that the fluid level is correct. Now let me show you what would happen if we didn't have this tool and we relied on the height of that red straw inside of the transmission oil pan. So that I'm going to let this level down to a lower level. Notice now we have fluid just draining out of there like crazy, and we're just going to sit there and drain and drain and drain fluid. And this is where a technician would think they're doing a good job, and they would think, oh, the transmission fluid level is too full. Well, it's not too full. It's just you're checking it at 186 degrees rather than 104 to 113. So we've drained fluid out of there. The question now is, how do we add it? So let's compensate for the increased fluid temperature. We'll take this back up to the 71 millimeter mark. Right there. Okay. Notice now that when we are low on fluid, we're just barely getting any drip out of there at all. Let me zoom in just a little bit, see if we can get a better. There we go. Notice it's not dripping out like it was before. So if you see this, then you know that the fluid level is too low, and now we need to add fluid. So to add fluid, we need the third piece of this special toolkit, the fluid pump that I showed you over on the table earlier. So let me zoom out so you can see this fluid pump. Okay, this fluid pump tank here, we fill it full of the proper fluid. It has a pump handle right here that pumps as you push down and pull back up, and it has a flexible hose with a quick connect fitting, and we're going to connect that pump right here to this same line that we hooked the vacuum pump to before, and we're going to pump fluid into the transaxle in the same hole that we applied a vacuum. So let me disconnect that and connect up our hose. There we go. Okay, I've got the pump connected to the inlet of the transmission, and now let's watch this hose again, and we will pump fluid into the transmission until we see fluid come out of this hose here. So I'm going to start pumping, putting transmission fluid back in. I'm going to pump slowly because I can pump more in. There we go. So see, now the fluid is starting to come out. Too much fluid I've added, but it's better to have too much than too little, because we can just simply let it drain here until the fluid level is where it should be. So we'll just let it sit here. We'll let it get down to where it's just barely a slow drip. Getting closer, closer. So obviously this is a fluid level check that you're not going to be able to do in 20 minutes, even 5 minutes. This is not a quick, simple, easy service. And I recommend that if you have a customer that wants their transmission fluid level checked, or if you see a leak and you suspect that it needs to be checked, that you charge appropriately. This is a big job. It needs to be done correctly. You need to have proper measurements. You need to have proper scan tool to read the transmission temperature. And other vehicle manufacturers are very similar in their fluid level checking procedure for transmissions that do not have a dipstick. Toyota is the only one that has this adjustable straw that I'm aware of, although Ford has one that you put a vacuum on and put fluid in and then undo the vacuum, and it has a straw inside the pan that allows the fluid to come out until it reaches a certain level. But all of these are temperature dependent. All right, if we look at this drain hose now, you can see that we are back to a slow drip. That's what we're looking for, is just that slow drip right there. Now, if we make the mistake of just simply unscrewing this adjustable straw out of the bottom of the transaxle, all that fluid's just going to come out. So we have to put a vacuum back on the transaxle to get it out. So I'm going to disconnect our pump line here, get it out of the way. We're going to reconnect our vacuum source, turn back on the vacuum. And when I turn the vacuum on, I want you to watch what happens to this dripping fluid here. So you can see it's dripping. Here comes the vacuum right there. As soon as I hit the vacuum, it stops dripping. We put a vacuum on the transaxle now. Now we can unscrew this tool. It will be hot, so be careful. Notice we're not losing any fluid at all, even though we've added fluid. And now I need to get the the drain plug that I took out. And we'll put that back in. There's a torque specification. I think it's 36 foot-pounds on this plug, and there's a torque specification on the fill plug also. Now I can turn off the vacuum. So we've got a lever right here and a lever down on the vacuum tank itself. All right, well, obviously now we just take off the adapters and put the fill plug back in. But that is the most involved transmission fluid level checking procedure I've ever seen. It involves probably hundreds of dollars worth of tools. One of the common questions that my students ask me is, how much do those tools cost? And I really don't know. I'm sure it's several $100s to get them all. And they say, oh, our shop will never buy those. Well, what's the alternative? How else are you going to check this fluid and fluid level and get it at the right level unless you've got a system something like this? Like I said before, these transaxles are very picky about their fluid level. Like, you can burn the whole transaxle up if it's wrong, and somebody who doesn't even realize that they're doing it wrong drains fluid out so it becomes too low. And how much does a transaxle cost? Well, I guarantee it costs a lot more than those tools. So do yourself a favor, get the right tools for the job, or don't do it at all. Now on the Toyota, other Toyota vehicles and Lexus vehicles, they still have that little, not the red straw, but they've got a metal tube in their pans. They don't have this temperature compensating tool for those. And so those, like on the Toyota Tundra and any other vehicle that does not have a dipstick, it is temperature sensitive, and you need to be aware that you need to be checking those fluid levels at the proper temperature, or you can cause a low fluid level and transmission damage without even realizing that you did it. Well, this has been a demonstration of checking the fluid level on a Toyota Transaxle without a dipstick. The Toyota U660E, U760E and F, E's two-wheel drive, F's four-wheel drive. Have a good day.